Hi everyone, I'm Tracy, your host for Chandler's Channel, and today's session is our session with Whitehawk on his wisdom, called Whitehawk's Wisdom, and the topic is past lives. So if that's what you're here for, stay tuned. I'll go get Whitehawk shortly and channel him for that. Our previous Whitehawk's Wisdom was our monthly reading for September 2013. And in it, Whitehawk had stated how, although for many, it will just simply be a change of season and the cool air and the crisp air arriving, for many it will be the end of days, and to certainly put our prayers out there for the crisis occurring in Syria. So if you haven't had a chance to have a listen, please do. It's in the monthly reading playlist, or it'll be in the recent uploads if you have a look. All right, past lives. There is a book written by Brian Weiss, W-E-I-S-S, and I believe it's called Many Lives, Many Masters. And that was my first introduction into past lives. And then, of course, when you work in the intuitive field, the intuition field, you hear a lot of things about past lives. And the one thing I learned is that sometimes that which you abhor or hate in this life is the result of something that occurred to you in a past life, or vice versa. Something that you really adore and love in this life, or is around you, or you gravitate to or feel comfort with, is because of something or who you were in a past life, which is just really fascinating, because when you really sort of pay attention, don't work hard at it, just let the information come to you, you realize that you go, wow, maybe, maybe. And when I found out a past life of mine, it made complete sense because of things that were around me that I really, really hated, names I hated. Never even thought that it was because of who I was in a past life, but made complete sense when I figured it out. So lots of fun. Play with it. Journaling really helps with that again. And recording your dreams too can really, really, really help. And learning to channel spirit also is an extremely helpful thing, as we will see when I consciously channel my spirit guide, Whitehawk, which is different from chance channeling, right? Because I'm awake during the channeling process. Whereas where you trance channel, and if you've ever seen it, it really is quite fascinating. The people allow the spirit to completely embody them. So the authenticity of the words coming out is just that word is their words. Like if you think of the whole Whoopi Goldberg, Demi Moore, the movie, was it Ghost? Oh, crud. Oh, I hate when I can't remember these things. And Whoopi Goldberg comes back in Patrick Swayze's body. That's kind of like what it is, right? I mean, but they don't stay long, right? Like, we're not, what's that called? We're not being demonized or possessed, right? Possessed, that's the word I'm looking for. It's not a possession. Like, it's temporary that they come in and you allow them to come in and then they leave. And of course, these spirits are loving and gentle and kind, right? You have to think that's what they are. Indeed, they really are. I don't care what other cultures believe in la. Generally, my experience has been extremely healthy, and I have found that in the end it is really the fear within us that makes us believe that dealing with spirit is unhealthy, or working with the devil, or oftentimes people who have read the Bible, and keep in mind it had to be people who wrote the Bible, and it is an interpretation of what is written in the Bible that you are taking, someone's interpretation that you are believing, but it is also people's interpretation of how they are writing the story of what happened with Jesus, right? And so on and so forth. So keep that in mind. They were just people, right? and experiment. Go out there and experiment on your own to test it. You know, don't always take people's words for it. So that's my my rant. So let's go in and see what Whitehawk has to say about past lives. Indeed, he says, past lives. What can one say about past lives that has not been said before? And for whatever reason, we're all kind of giggling, like there's an irony to what he's just said. I don't exactly get it, but that's what's going on. And there's always this one little brown-haired girl who's listening, and she's giggling away. He goes, that's right, children. And so he's speaking to us. In the regular spot we come to, kind of like at the forest's edge. And he's not on horseback this time. He's just come to speak to us. And it's been a while since I've seen Whitehawk come with a headdress on. But this time he has his headdress on. It's a short headdress, so the headdress being with feathers, right? And he says, yes, what can be said about past lives that has not already been said? And again, the little giggle happens. He says, my children, there are so many of you who are afraid to believe that one can actually be reincarnated, which is really quite frightening. He says, no, not the reincarnation aspect, but the fact that you disbelieve that this could actually happen. And if this did happen, well, that's just too much and scares the bejeebies out of me, he says. And everyone kind of, okay. And he says, past lives do occur. He says, n'est-ce pas? Could it not be because we come back over and over again to help the world evolve? To help the people of Earth to move forward, he says? Could it not be something as uncomplicated and simple as that? Could it not? And some people are grumbling and talking amongst themselves, and some people are like, hell, I don't even believe in heaven, you know? So how could we possibly come back here and reincarnate, you know? And he goes, perhaps, he says, but that is your belief. So if that is your belief, he says, then that is what you believe, and that's what you walk with, the fear that you walk with throughout your life. But I do not believe that, and I'm here to gently tell you that indeed we do come back. We come back in many forms, in fact, he says. We could come back as a dog. We could come back as that three-legged dog. Next door, he says, and I'm seeing a three-legged little, like, terrier, Heinz 57 breed of a three-legged dog. He says, yes, we could come back as that. Simply because in his life, there is reason why he's here to help us evolve to a new level, to a higher vibration, to a more joyful way of living, he says. There are many lessons in that three-legged dog and why he comes back, he says. Could you not think why? N'est-ce pas, he says? Do you not believe, n'est-ce pas? Why not? Why could it not be that he would come back and he would deliver us unto us big lessons? And I kind of telepathically, Whitehawk and I have spoken, because I'm like, oh yes, the whole bunny story of me and my bunnies, and how I learned a lot through this bunny den. He goes, yes, indeed. They come back, they teach you lessons about life and death, and they move on. He says, and he puts a hand on my shoulder. He says, do not feel bad for the bunnies. He says, they are warm. He says, they are cuddly. He says, they are safe. Do not worry about them, he says to me. And so he says, yes, to continue on, what I want to tell you, my friends, is simply this. We do come back, and we do come back in more than one form, he says, not just humans. We are not the epitome of it all, he says, of the universe. He says, could you not want to come back as something as majestic as a stag, as a deer? And some people are kind of having a hard time swallowing that, because it was enough to believe that maybe we came back in human form a couple of times, but to believe we actually come back like as a dog or now a deer, that's just too much. Ingest it, my children. Ingest it. Why do you think maybe there are people on Earth who can communicate with dogs, who can communicate with the animals. Think about that for a second. And then see how that feels. And of course, be it said, I'm like, oh, that is just so cool, you know. Of course. And he's like, yes, children, there are many reasons that many of us come back and we're really good at something, he says, because maybe in a past life we already did it, or maybe because in a past life we were another form and we understand that form really well. He says that we're able to help it in this life to move forward. And so then in my mind again, I'm talking with him telepathically, and I'm like thinking of plant forms. I'm thinking, well, maybe you come back as a botanist then, right? And he goes, yes. And you are able to help the plant life on planet Earth to evolve, to become better, to help us break through scientific discoveries, he says. Do you ever think of that? So everyone's kind of ingesting that. And again, me, I'm like, that's just cool. And he says, yes, my child, I am glad that you are enjoying this. He says, for some, this might be a little unnerving, a little unearthing, a little nerve jangling, he says. And some may never want to believe it at all and are, you know, hitting their stop button and may never come back and talk to us again, he says. But they will see. They will ingest the news, he says, and then they will move forward with that. And they may become more aware, and they may not, he says. But for us, for those of us who are here, who are listening, I am giving you this information. And he says, and you are ingesting it well, children. Very well. He says, I feel like I have just opened your minds to a whole new level. He says, I see it. I feel it. He says, I see and I feel that you could not even imagine what I have just taught you here, what I have just said to you. It was, he says, it wasn't even a seed in your mind, what I have just told you here. And everyone's like, yeah, tell us more. Like, yes, you know, sitting there like that. There is so much more in just it all, he says. Think why there are whales in the ocean, and there are the marine biologists who make these huge scientific breakthroughs, he says. Do you think that that is coincidental? I assure you it is not, he says. There is always a hand by the big guy above in everything you do, he says. Children, we come here for you, to help you, to move you along, for our love, for the planet, for humanity, for the children of the planet, but not just the children of the planet. The various life forms, the bodies of water, he says, the land, the earth, the air, he says, every single aspect of it. It's not just about you and me, children. Although we believe that we are the biggest form of life here on earth, we are wrong. We are wrong, he says. But I can come to you and I can tell you this, and you may continue to live as you so choose, he says, believing we are grander than everything else, but we are not. We are a part of the whole. We are all connected, and there is a reason why we come back, he says, in various forms, over and over and over again. So take a moment, he says, to ingest that. And take a moment, he says, when you're out in nature, and connect with it, and see what you hear, see, smell, think, view. See, just see. And you will have a better understanding of the world, of us above you and below you, he says. You will have a better understanding, a bigger understanding, a more understanding. He says, so do not just think you are a part of the great whole of unto yourself as just being human. Oh no, It is much bigger than that. And we are all working together for the betterment of the whole. Oh yes, children, you might think, well, is that why I hate, thistles and poison ivy because I was a botanist in a past life? Perhaps. But maybe that poison ivy, he says, also had a message it needed to give you, to get you to where you are, to make you realize that you've been here before, that you understand poison ivy. But how come you understand poison ivy? How could you possibly understand poison ivy? And this is your first occurrence with it here on Earth. Yet you do somehow. It says, check in with those little nuances, children. And the world will open up. The wonder of the world will open up even bigger to you. Do not be discouraged, he says. Do not be discouraged. Do not be frightened. It is wonderful. It is amazement. It is not fear. It is not fear. You are loved, and you are loved. So God bless with your newfound knowledge here today, children. Knowing that I have given you a huge, the biggest piece of a puzzle of all. God bless, children, he says. God bless. And when he leaves, he's whimsical, and mischievous almost, knowing that he's left us with all this stuff to think about. We're just like, oh my God, are you telling me I was a grain of sand at some point in time or something? Or maybe I was a rocket scientist in a previous life or something like that, right? And so he's left us with this wonder, and it's wonderful. We feel alive, we feel energetic, thinking that, holy smack, that's unbelievable, but we love it. Thank you. He says, no, thank you. And he does his high-ho silver on his horse, and off he goes. Well, that was our fun reading on past lives. Ingest it, see what feels good and doesn't feel good. And, you can even write in a journal, put the question down, what I'd like to know one of my past lives, perhaps the least jarring one of all, that the one that wouldn't scare you as much, to find out you were president one time or something might scare you, right? If you're not on that level right now. So, or to find out, you were a dinosaur or something like that might frighten you. So ask for a past life that wouldn't scare you right off the top. And just write down, I'd like to know a past life. And then pay attention to things that come into your world in the next 24 hours that you abhor, or it comes into your life repeatedly over the next 24 hours. So it might be about polar bears. You might see something on polar bears, something on television, and then you see a magazine cover on polar bears, or you're at the gas station and they tell you to get, your gas card and support polar bears, that's what you have to look. When there's always that congruency that occurs, those parallels, keep an eye out for those, because then it's saying to you, listen, you're asking about past lives, I'm telling you. Right? But that could also say it was polar bears. Well, maybe it means you lived in Churchill, Manitoba, or something like that at some point in time, right? So just play with it instead of being scared, and see what you come up. And you might go, really? I was a scientist in Churchill, Manitoba, or I was a polar bear? And maybe go, well, maybe that's why I tuned to polar bears, or maybe I did that project in grade 12 on polar bears, and I knew so much already, and I just got it because maybe I was a polar bear. I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. See what comes out of it for you. I mean, when I found out some of my past life, I was like, are you kidding me? Did I? No, really? But I was, and it is. So move forward, have fun with it. Subscribe, it's free. Like, share, comment, be kind. Yes, be kind and be clean. You know, this can be some crazy stuff, but there's no need to be mean to me, all right? I am just the messenger, and we're just opening up your mind. All right, see you on Monday for our weekly reading. God bless. I'm Tracy for a Chandler's Channel.